Hello and welcome to Africa Live, where we bring you African and global news from all perspectives. I'm Famida Miller. Well, it's 8 p.m. here in Nairobi, Kenya, 1 p.m. in Washington, D.C. and 1 a.m. in Beijing. Now, also coming up in the next hour. Theft on an industrial scale, anger as a new report blames international criminal networks for theft of Nigeria's oil wealth. And African Queens, Kenya wins the women's volleyball title for a record 8th time. Heads of state and government from members of the African Union are expected to meet on October 13 for what is described as an emergency summit. High on the agenda for the special summit is the continent's relations with the International Criminal Court. CCTV's Gurum Chala has more.
According to the African Union Secretariat here in Addis Ababa, it's likely that an emergency summit will be held at the level of the heads of states in mid-October. During the meeting, the leaders from the continent are expected to discuss in depth the issue of the International Criminal Court. And according to some political analysts, the African Union leaders are expected to take a common stance on whether to join Kenya's planned pullout from Rome statutes from the prosecution of their leaders in the International Criminal Court. As part of the road to this summit, foreign affairs ministers from member states under the African Union are expected also to meet and draft the agenda for the higher level meeting before the leaders come on the scene. Once the emergency summit materializes, the heads of states and governments are expected to make one of the biggest decisions in the history of the Union, possibly a general consensus to leave the Rome Statutes in mass. The African Union as a continental organization is not a member of the ICC. Grumdala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
In a related development, the second vice president of the International Criminal Court, Judge Kuno Tafosa, has responded on behalf of the ICC presidency to a letter from the chairpersons of the African Union and the African Union Commission. The letter addressed various aspects of the ongoing ICC proceedings involving Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. Tafosa says, quote, the presidency has no legal powers to consider arguments and concerns related to ongoing cases and that such matters should be raised before the relevant chambers. Judge Tafosa also stressed that the judges of the court must take all their decisions in accordance with the mandate and legal framework established by the states that created the court, including the 34 African states that are party to the Rome Statute, end quote. Meanwhile, Cote d'Ivoire will try former First Lady Simone Gbagbo domestically for alleged crimes against humanity. She's also being sought by the International Criminal Court. A statement from the Ivorian government says the decision by the cabinet aims to offer Mrs. Gbagbo a fair and balanced trial. The government declined to transfer Simone Gbagbo to the court when the ICC indictment was unsealed last November. Simone was arrested along with her husband in April 2011 as violence following disputed elections came to an end. She's since been held under house arrest in the northwestern city of Odiene. Now to a shocking development in South Africa as investigations continue into last year's Marikana mine shooting which killed 34 miners. The Commission of Inquiries revealed discrepancies in the police's account of events. Police say they acted in self-defense just days after 2 officers were killed by protesters. However, 10 days after gaining access to police computer hard drives and previously unseen police documents, the Commission says police falsified or withheld documents and gave false accounts of events. Well, National Police spokesperson Solomon Makale has called the statement, quote, unfortunate and highly prejudicial, end quote. He also says the Commission's evidence leaders had passed judgment on the police without giving them a chance to explain. The hearing's been adjourned until Wednesday to allow the Commission to scroll through thousands more pages of documents and seek access to additional hard drives and electronic records. Now, the South African Police Service has assured the nation that crime is under control, even though forms of serious crime are on the increase. The latest annual crime statistics released show that the murder rate has increased by 0.6%. But some analysts say they're concerned over the way the statistics were calculated.
Releasing the statistics, police top brass emphasized the drop in crime in South Africa over the past 9 years, calling it a story of confidence and hope. But murder, attempted murder and other serious contact crimes in South Africa, such as home invasions, hijackings and armed robberies, have all gone up in the past financial year. They focused on crime ratios in terms of crimes committed per 100,000 people, instead of the actual number of cases. Experts say the police also incorrectly calculated the statistics, making the figures look better than they actually are. Police said murders had gone up by 0.6%, but experts believe it's closer to 3%.
So murder's been coming down for about 6 years, and suddenly it goes up by 650 cases. That is a warning sign. That tells us that something's changed, and we need to understand that so that that increase doesn't happen. We don't want people to be dying unnecessarily. Similarly, 1,200 more homes were attacked by armed gangs last year than was the previous year.
Crime analysts say although South Africa is a much safer country now than it was 10 years ago, the increase in the murder rate is particularly worrying. And they say the fact that the government only releases crime statistics months after the crimes had been committed makes it difficult for the police to practice proactive crime prevention.
This is not to say the police aren't doing a good job. This is not an attack on the police. But it is important that our government responds and warns us about what is happening. So to tell us that crime has gone up, murder, robberies on the streets and in our homes, last year, this is when it was happening, 6 months after it happened, isn't helping us develop proactive crime prevention strategies.
The murder rate in South Africa is 4.5 times higher than the global homicide rate, with an average of 45 South Africans killed in violent crimes every day. Renee Dalcom, CCTV, Pretoria.
Now, for more on that crime report and the latest from the Marikana Commission, we're joined by CCTV's Renee Dalcom. She's live in Johannesburg. Renee, let's begin with the Marikana Commission. With the police reputation in tatters, what is actually happening with regard to that evidence that they've given, and going forward, what's next for the police?
Well, many people I've spoken to today say that the image of the South African police took a huge knock with the Marikana massacre last year. And they say if anyone should want to get to the bottom and to the truth of what went wrong at Marikana last year, it should be senior police officers and police officers, certainly the ones who were involved in Marikana as well. So what they're saying is that the next step really should be the National Commissioner herself or the police minister calling for an independent inquiry, trying to get to find out what happened, if or not police officers really were involved in deliberately trying to mislead the Marikana Commission and the nation. They say this has to happen as a matter of urgency, but so far the police have remained mum on the subject. Of course, all eyes now will be on the commission, which has been adjourned until Wednesday. So all eyes on the commission to see what the police will tell us in response to those allegations by the Marikana Commission next Wednesday.
Now, Renee, not a great week for the police and South African government with regard to crime as well. It's quite a strange scenario, really. On one hand, you've got almost aggressive behavior from the police in the Marikana instance, and now it appears that police aren't doing enough in terms of crime. What is the situation?
Well, just a few minutes ago, the police released a statement in which they said they had used a certain method of calculating the crime statistics, but that they had not tried to hide anything and that there were no deliberate attempts to mislead South Africa. So much more of that expected to come out in the next coming hours and days. But the police minister has remained adamant, and he stands by the fact that, according to him, they have worked hard to turn things around in South Africa since 1994, and that they are slowly but surely winning the fight against crime. He's also yesterday said that the police would now work doubly hard to ensure that what he called the slight increase in serious crime in South Africa is turned around as a matter of urgency. But many people I've spoken to, such as the expert you've just seen in the previous report, say that you cannot simply release crime statistics in a crime-ridden country like South Africa once a year. It has to be done monthly or at least quarterly if the police and the public in general are to have any chance in fighting crime and trying to succeed in crime prevention.
All right, thanks very much, Renee. We'll leave it there for now. We're speaking there to CCTV's Renee Delcom live in Johannesburg, just giving us an update on those latest statistics released by the South African government. Well, it's time now for a quick break. When we come back. Audacious attack, suspected Islamist militants engage security forces in Nigeria's capital. And stamp of approval, Rwanda marches on after successful legislative elections.
President Robert Mugabe won another term in what the African Union and SADC observers described as a free, peaceful and credible election.
The election is free.
But the West isn't just about to lift the biting sanctions against Harare.
As for those old Western countries who happen to hold a different, negative view of our electoral process, we dismiss them as the vile ones.
Is it yet another classic case of double standards? Find out in Talk Africa this week.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Now, Nigerian forces and members of Boko Haram clashed in a shootout near the main residential compound for lawmakers in Abuja on Friday. It's the first clash involving Islamist militants in the capital this year. This happened after a security team searching for weapons after a tip-off arrested suspected members of Boko Haram. State security says a dozen suspects were arrested in connection with the incident. Boko Haram is seen as the gravest security threat to Africa's most populous country and the top oil producer. A Somali police official says 16 people have died after a quarry where they were mining construction stone collapsed. So far, there have been no reports of survivors and the number of those missing is still unknown. Residents in Karen district north of Mogadishu dug through rocks and sand looking for survivors, but their efforts were hampered by darkness. Somalia is recovering from decades of war that left the country's infrastructure in tatters with no resources for disaster response.
This is the worst quarry accident we have ever witnessed. There were other quarry crashes in the past, but this is the most fatal.
Let's have a quick look at other news from across the continent. A Roman Catholic nun in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been awarded the prestigious 2013 Nansen Refugee Award, which recognizes exceptional work done among refugees. The prize, given annually by the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, comes with a $100,000 cash award. Sister Angelique was recognized for her work with displaced women and girls in the region, where she counsels refugees and helps them learn new skills. About 2,000 women and girls have gone through her training program at the Center for Reintegration and Development. Elsewhere, dozens of protesters gathered outside Morocco's Justice Ministry on Thursday. They were angered by the arrest of a journalist whose news website had a link to a video by North Africa's Al-Qaeda branch criticizing the kingdom. Alia Nuzla, the editor of Lacom.com, was arrested on Tuesday at his home. The Justice Ministry says the video was inciting acts of terrorism in Morocco. And in the eastern DR Congo, South African troops have provided access to their base in the town of Goma, where they're conducting a drill. Over 1,000 South African soldiers, along with Tanzanian troops, make up the UN's 3,000-strong intervention brigade. Under the auspices of the UN, the brigade's been given a strong peace enforcement mandate to seek out armed groups and neutralize them. Now, the official results of the just concluded legislative elections in Rwanda have been released. The party of President Paul Kagame, which came to power after the genocide of 1994, won 41 of the 53 seats directly contested on Monday. RFP is accredited for transforming Rwanda politically, socially and, of course, economically. The Social Democratic Parties won 7 seats, while the Liberal Party got 5. Women will once again dominate Rwandan National Assembly after garnering 51 seats out of 80. Now, 98% of the eligible 6 million voters cast their ballot. The vote, which is seen by many as a test of Rwanda's democratic credentials, is said to have been calm and peaceful. Now we stay with Rwanda, which has been dubbed Africa's success story. Rising from the ashes of the 1994 genocide that left close to 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus dead, Rwanda embarked on a bold journey towards socio-political and economic stability. Now, the just concluded parliamentary elections has cemented President Paul Kagame's Rwanda Patriotic Front. They have held on to power for close to 2 decades now. CCTV's Jane Kyo explores whether this is a sign of an enhanced or shrinking democratic space.
Kigali, the heartbeat of Rwanda, a country that is on the fast path to recovery following one of the worst atrocities in modern history. The city is abuzz with business and alive to the latest political happenings. Monday's parliamentary vote, the third since the 1994 genocide, no doubt marked a democratic milestone and set a new chapter, that of a country steadily shaking off the tug of victims of genocide and taking up space as one of the fastest growing economies. There was never a doubt about who was going to win and perhaps why.
President Kagame is a good leader. He's a good leader. He has bring many things. Like schools, peace.
Genocide.
RPF stopped the genocide, united the country. It's brought many things like roads, cars for the poor, and education.
Maybe when RPF gets tired, the others can take over. But so far, it's not tired, and we're happy.
President Paul Kagame's Rwandan Patriotic Front that put an end to the genocide almost 20 years ago has been credited with the dramatic transformation of Rwanda. In 2012, the International Monetary Fund put Rwanda's economic growth at 7.7%, and the World Bank has placed it at 52 out of 185 countries on its Ease of Doing Business Index. Recently, the president launched a more ambitious economic development plan aimed at pushing economic growth to 11.5% for each of the 5 years and reducing poverty by at least 15% from the current 40 to 30%. Still, while the country is roundly lauded for its growth and lack of corruption, some claim the democratic space has been reduced and that despite embracing multi-party politics, it remains effectively a one-party state. The opposition in Rwanda can best be described as subtle, if not government-friendly. President Paul Kagame has, however, been quick to dismiss talk of suppressing divergent political views. And many experts say, given its dark history, it may just take much more time before Rwandans claim a share of wider democratic space. Jane Kyo, CCTV, Kigali, Rwanda.
Let's take another quick break. Still ahead.
The time for the fucking West to determine the future of Africa and urinate everywhere is gone.
Political satire, why a puppet show is all the rage in Kenya. You're watching Africa Live. Now, South Sudan's government has rejected claims that Ugandan motorbike operators were harassed and expelled from the country. Some Sudanese envoy to Uganda, Samuel Duarte, says the removal order targeted all foreign motorbike operators who conducted business in the country illegally. CCTV's Isabel Nakiria has the details from Uganda.
About 1,000 Ugandan motorbike operators returned home from South Sudan, saying the government there expelled them. Some riders also claimed their motorbikes were confiscated. South Sudan says the order targeted all foreigners operating illegally in the motorbike business in the country. The government also claims some border riders were involved in some criminal activities.
The order was issued for the protection of the Southern Sudanese, as well as those nationals from other countries living in South Sudan, for their safety. Because you will find that you will be carried with the border to unknown destination, beaten up, robbed, and taken away. The people of South Sudan were not used for this.
The South Sudan embassy in Kampala now claims their nationals are being harassed by Ugandans.
I saw South Sudanese that were beaten up by those elements in the society who misinterpreted the ministerial order and said, why should they stay here in Uganda? They should go back to their country.
The two countries have had tense relations for some time now. Ugandan traders have long claimed harassment outside the capital, Juba. Uganda's junior minister for regional affairs, Asman Kinji, is calling for close cooperation between the governments of the two countries on this matter.
It was wrong. No Ugandan should attack any Ugandan or any other citizen in the country outside the law. What should have happened if a Sudanese had committed any crime? It is to report that crime and the law takes its course. But to take the law in your own hand is a condemnable act.
The Uganda authorities have, however, expressed disappointment at the short notice the riders were given to leave South Sudan. Despite both countries conceding they have recorded mistreatment of some citizens, both Uganda and South Sudan have vowed they will address these issues amicably and maintain their good working relationship. Isabel Nakiria, CCTV, Kampala.
South Africa is making significant strides in fighting the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and its efforts are being recognized globally. The United Nations AIDS program recently praised the country for bringing down the rate of new infections to 0.8%. That's down from 1.4%. The number of people dying of HIV and AIDS has dropped significantly as a result of treatment. CCTV's Sumitra Naidu reports.
Scotland was originally a home for orphan children when it opened 77 years ago. Back in the late 90s, South Africa was hard hit by the HIV/AIDS pandemic. Pregnant mothers were passing on the disease to their unborn babies. Scotland decided to open a hospice for the babies in 1996. But because of political opposition, it had to look for sponsors to buy anti-AIDS drugs. This limited the number of babies that received treatment. In 2003, 87 babies died at the hospice. Sister Kitiwe recalls that painful period.
During that time, there were so many children who were here, very, very old children. You know, it was a matter of life and death during that time.
Scotland is no longer the sad place it used to be, thanks to the government's rollout of antiretroviral treatment. The Department of Health officially started the rollout of ARVs in 2004. Patients showed improvement almost immediately.
Just over 10 years ago, the number of people dying of HIV and AIDS-related diseases was extremely high. Today, that number has dropped significantly, largely as a result of improved education and government's rollout of antiretroviral treatment.
Especially amongst babies. Scotland announced earlier this year that it was officially closing down the hospice.
In the last 3 years, we didn't have one death related to HIV and AIDS. So sort of last year we realized, you know, we probably don't need the hospice anymore. And, you know, we dreamt of that.
Scotland is now redirecting funds into educating and caring for communities. It runs classes for young children and has opened a toy library. Government, meanwhile, is improving its rollout of ARVs. It recently announced the 1 pill a day for people living with HIV and AIDS.
There were people who will take about 9 tablets a day, 3 tablets 3 times a day, or 2 tablets twice a day, etc. Now they only have to take 1 tablet once a day. 1. If you take it in the morning, you take it and go to work. We were spending 313 South African rands per patient per month, 313. Now we're spending only 89.
The rollout of one ARV a day has already begun. The new pill is cheaper and has less side effects too. Smitra Nadu, CCTV, Johannesburg.
Millions of Kenyans tune in every week to watch a political satire TV show called XYZ. The animated main characters are less than a meter tall, but observers say they're having a big impact on Kenya's political scene. CCTV's Maria Galang has filed this report.
A show that caters to Kenya's thirst for entertainment and for robust political debate. By some estimates, 1 in 5 Kenyans watch the XYZ show, among them the country's decision makers. We're behind the scenes here at the XYZ show, a show that has gained so much popularity and critical acclaim both here in Kenya and around the African continent that even the very politicians it so brutally satirizes, like Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta here, are said to be glued to the screens every time it goes on. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. President.
Pleasure to meet you too. Where do you come from?
CCTV.
How will you pay for it?
There have been similar shows in Britain and France, and more recently South Africa.
Have they no conscience?
But for Kenya, XYZ shows how far the country has come in opening up the democratic space and making often difficult subjects accessible.
MC Fatcom na wenzangu wale wote sita. Hapa Hague tumefika. Nani wengine kama sisi?
Today we are actually shooting our 96th episode of the XYZ show, and today what we are doing on the set, we basically the president is getting a briefing from his kitchen cabinet. So we have the head of security, and we also have the head of the public service, basically the fellow in charge of all the cabinet secretaries. So basically he's trying to get a feel of what Kenyans think about his reign so far, the projects he has actually initiated so far, and basically trying to give him the feel of how the country is based on the ICC situation.
Filming can take up to 1 week, and creating a puppet can cost up to $7,000.
One puppet actually can go up to 1 month, depending on the character. There are some characters which are difficult to capture, but there are others which are a bit easier. They have their distinct features.
But it's a winning formula. XYZ has recently been voted the best television series in Africa, and it's starting to gain attention outside Kenya too.
I really wanna live forever and ever.
So we live life like a video. Long live Mugabe.
Maria Galang, CCTV, Nairobi.
Well, on that note, time for latest business news with Panina.